In the final days before Donald Trump was sworn in as president, members of his inner circle pleaded with him to acknowledge publicly what U.S. intelligence agencies had already concluded, that Russia's interference in the 2016 election was real. Holding impromptu interventions in Trump's 26th floor corner office at Trump Tower, advisors, including Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and designated Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, prodded the president-elect to accept the findings that the nation's spy chiefs had personally presented to him on January
6.
They sought to convince Trump that he could affirm the validity of the intelligence without diminishing his electoral win, according to 3 officials involved in the sessions.
More important, they said that doing so was the only way to put the matter behind him politically and free him to pursue his goal of closer ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
This was part of the normalization process, one participant said.
There was a big effort to get him to be a standard president.
But as aides persisted, Trump became agitated.
He railed that the intelligence couldn't be trusted and scoffed at the suggestion that his candidacy had been propelled by forces other than his own strategy, message and charisma.
Told that members of his incoming cabinet had already publicly backed the intelligence report on Russia, Trump shot back, "So what?" Admitting that the Kremlin had hacked Democratic Party emails, he said, was a trap.
As Trump addressed journalists on January
11 in the lobby of Trump Tower, he came as close as he ever would to grudging acceptance.
As far as hacking, I think it was Russia, he said, adding that we also get hacked by other countries and other people.
As hedged as those words were, Trump regretting them almost immediately.
It's not me, he said to aides afterward.
It wasn't right.
Nearly a year into his presidency, Trump continues to reject the evidence that Russia waged an assault on a pillar of American democracy and supported his run for the White House.
The result is without obvious parallel in U.S. history, a situation in which the personal insecurities of the president, and his refusal to accept what even many in his administration regard as objective reality, have impaired the government's response to a national security threat.
The repercussions radiate across the government.
Rather than search for ways to deter Kremlin attacks or safeguard U.S.
elections, Trump has waged his own campaign to discredit the case that Russia poses any threat, and he has resisted or attempted to roll back efforts to hold Moscow to account.
His administration has moved to undo at least some of the sanctions the previous administration imposed on Russia for its election interference, exploring the return of 2 Russian compounds in the United States that President Barack Obama had seized, the measure that had most galled Moscow.
Months later, when Congress moved to impose additional penalties on Moscow, Trump opposed the measures fiercely.
Trump has never convened a cabinet-level meeting on Russian interference or what to do about it, administration officials said.
Although the issue has been discussed at lower levels at the National Security Council, one former high-ranking Trump administration official said there is an unspoken understanding within the NSC that to raise the matter is to acknowledge its validity, which the president would see as an affront. Trump's stance on the election is part of a broader entanglement with Moscow that has defined the first year of his presidency.
He continues to pursue an elusive bond with Putin, which he sees as critical to dealing with North Korea, Iran and other issues.
Having Russia in a friendly posture, he said last month, is an asset to the world and an asset to our country.
His position has alienated close American allies and often undercut members of his cabinet, all against the backdrop of a criminal probe into possible ties between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin. This account of the Trump administration's reaction to Russia's interference and policies toward Moscow is based on interviews with more than 50 current and former U.S.
officials, many of whom had senior roles in the Trump campaign and transition team or have been in high-level positions at the White House or at national security agencies. Most agreed to speak only on the condition of anonymity, citing the sensitivity of the subject.
Trump administration officials defended the approach with Russia, insisting that their policies and actions have been tougher than those pursued by Obama but without unnecessarily combative language or posture.
Our approach is that we don't irritate Russia, we deter Russia, a senior administration official said.
The last administration had it exactly backwards.
White House officials cast the president's refusal to acknowledge Russian interference in the election as an understandably human reaction.
The president obviously feels that the idea that he's been put into office by Vladimir Putin is pretty insulting, said a second senior administration official. But his views are not a constraint on the government's ability to respond to future election threats, the official said.
Our first order in dealing with Russia is trying to counter a lot of the destabilizing activity that Russia engages in.
Others questioned how such an effort could succeed when the rationale for that objective is routinely rejected by the president.
Michael V. Hayden, who served as CIA director under President George W. Bush, has described the Russian interference as the political equivalent of the September
11, 2001, attacks, an event that exposed a previously unimagined vulnerability and required a unified American response. What the president has to say is, we know the Russians did it, they know they did it, I know they did it, and we will not rest until we learn everything there is to know about how and do everything possible to prevent it from happening again, Hayden said in an interview.
Trump has never said anything close to that and will never say anything close to that.
U.S.
Officials said that a stream of intelligence from sources inside the Russian government indicates that Putin and his lieutenants regard the 2016 Active Measures campaign, as the Russians describe such covert propaganda operations, as a resounding, if incomplete, success.
Moscow has not achieved some its most narrow and immediate goals.
The annexation of Crimea from Ukraine has not been recognized.
Sanctions imposed for Russian intervention in Ukraine remain in place. Additional penalties have been mandated by Congress.
And a wave of diplomatic retaliation has cost Russia access to additional diplomatic facilities, including its San Francisco consulate.
But overall, U.S.
officials said, the Kremlin believes it got a staggering return on an operation that by some estimates cost less than $500,000 to execute and was organized around two main objectives, destabilizing U.S.
democracy and preventing Hillary Clinton, who is despised by Putin, from reaching the White House.
The bottom line for Putin, said one U.S.
official briefed on the stream of post-election intelligence, is that the operation was more than worth the effort.